Good afternoon. It's Burke Franklin from businesspowertools.com. I authored the book Business Black Belt, and I'm here on Thursday afternoons at 1 o'clock to answer questions, to do kind of an FAQ session, if you will. I'm presuming you've used some of our products or apps like Biz Plan Builder, Marketing Builder, Employee Manual Builder. Might have some questions about it, either about using the software itself, maybe not so much a technical question, but something about business planning, raising capital, something that's perplexing you someplace. You might be somewhere, in the middle of a template, in the middle of the app, you're perplexed, and you want to have some clarity around something that you're working on. I'm happy to answer those questions. So if you've got them, there's a chat box at the bottom of the panel here, and you can see that. And also you can email me at Burke, B-U-R-K-E, at businesspowertools.com. It's like it's spelled businesspowertools.com. And send me your questions if you're working on something. Of course, you can also contact us via our website anyway, the businesspowertools.com, under contact us, and ask a question. So that's always available too. We can handle technical issues, whatever you need, and take care of you that way. But I just thought I would do this, make myself available on Thursday afternoons to answer your questions live, come out and show myself from behind the computer, behind the products, and be here to answer your questions. So if you've got one and you're online right now, click something in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll address those. I'll address them right here. I quite frankly, if you ask a question, more often than not, I find many people have a similar question. So it's good for you to ask a question, and knowing that you're doing it for a number of people who maybe have the same question or didn't think to ask it, or were too embarrassed to ask it. Really shouldn't be anything too embarrassing to speak about when it comes to business planning or building your company. Although, I've had my moments of times when I wonder what the heck was I thinking. But anyway, let me clarify some stuff, and whatever I can do here today, well, I'd be happy to help you out. One of the things, until somebody asks me a question, I always have some thought I want to share with you. And I was thinking about how, I get all these emails and from different people pitching their classes and webinars and seminars and stuff on how to do something, how to say this, how to pitch your product, how to manage people, how to do this stuff. And it talks about things to say, things to do, the top 10 things, blah, 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 stuff to do. I think there's two components to being successful. And one is, of course, being really good at what you do and having the right things to say and all that. But here's the analogy. What I also want to say is there's also where you are coming from as a person when you talk to these people, or when you're doing something. And so what the similarity that is, the metaphor I think of, is a guitar. So for example, let's say you play guitar, you play any musical instrument for that matter, and you play it. You can play a song, you practice this song, and you play it over and over again. You get really good at playing it, and you can play it beautifully. Okay, so that's great. That's the technical aspect. That's like doing all the right things right. Then there's the part of the guitar where you could play the song perfectly, but if one of the strings in your guitar is not tuned, no matter how well you play it, it's just not going to sound right. And so that's the part where I think we need to work on ourselves, in that place of where we're coming from in what we say or do. In some circles, that's called ground of being. Some places that might be called your vibe. And I'm in California, and I grew up in California. I lived in Northern California, where it's kind of like the ground zero for all things woo-woo. And I think of, what can we share? There's some stuff I've learned that the woo-woo you can use. So what woo-woo can you about? How can I teach you the woo-woo you can use? I say that 1,000 times. So the idea there is, for example, in physics, simple physics, if I'm holding a guitar, a properly tuned guitar, and you're holding a properly tuned guitar, I could play, let's say, an A note. I could pluck the A string, and you're going to feel your guitar vibrate with it. So the guitar and a musical instrument definitely has a vibration that carries through the air to your ears and makes you think, wow, or nod your head or tap your feet. And so, like I said, if it's a properly tuned A string on my guitar to a properly tuned string on your guitar. So what happens is, just like if I'm playing this song and I'm really good at it, but my guitar is out of tune, it's not going to sound right. And so no matter how good I play it, if it's out of tune, it's never going to sound right. It's going to come across badly. And so I was talking to my coach. I have a coach and a mentor myself, and we were talking about just different things, and about certain things that, maybe from my childhood or my past or some experience, I have an issue with something, like we all do in some way, shape, or form. And those kind of things can show through. Those are the improperly tuned or untuned or just out of tune strings on your guitar. And I think of us as people as, let's say we have a million strings. We're like a million string guitar, or an infinite number of strings to our guitar. So if I have one of my strings is out of tune, or if I have a certain thing going on with me, I could come across, I could be the most polished, all of that here in video, even, or wherever, and I could say the right things, I could say them right, I could say them at the right time. But if I have a string that's out of tune in my own being, if I've got a part of my vibe is whacked, if you will, about something, I have an issue about something, that's going to come across. And so what therapy is about, what a lot of workshops are about, what a lot of books are about, and a lot of these webinars are about, is really, how do you get your own self tuned? How do you feel the right thing? How do you feel? So, like, for example, if you don't deserve something, like let's say you don't deserve the money, you feel you're afraid about asking for money. Many of our customers, of course, are raising capital, which is why they buy our Biz Plan Builder, among other reasons. And so I've asked people, I said, okay, so, and I set them up and I say, so, okay, let's learn the languages. Let's play this little game. So say after me, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? So that's in Spanish, meaning where's the library? ¿Dónde está is where is, and the library, la biblioteca. Okay, so that's easy. ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? Now, try this. Daddy, can I have $100? Some people can't even say the words. Some people get triggered, like, wow, my dad would never give me the money. My dad didn't have money. My parents would scream at me for even asking for the money. I wouldn't even dare ask for the money because I knew they wouldn't have it, and they'd scream at me and all that. So now what I'm pointing to is one of your strings in your guitar is out of tune because you have an internal issue about asking for the money. Now, you could write a beautiful business plan, which I think we help you do. You can practice your pitch. You can get in front of the right people. But if you have a little fear in the back of your mind about asking for the money because you wouldn't ask your dad for the money, for example, you walk into a venture capitalist office or angel investor's office, and statistically, demographically, these are middle-aged men, which would look a lot like and likely trigger the subconsciously that, these are father figure type men. And here you are asking daddy for $100. You're asking these guys for $1 million. And so you may be uncomfortable asking when this is the business they're in. I mean, they pray every day to whatever God they pray to for a deal, hopefully like yours, to come in the door and think, yes, let's fund this. Let's make $1 zillion in this great business. I love this entrepreneur. I love you, all that. Yet if you have this fear going on, this vibe, your untuned guitar string in your being that has you afraid of asking for the money, your presentation is not going to be the best performance you're going to give, even though you could be a really great guitarist. Your A string's not tuned. So just to think about that, so if you have any kind of behind the scenes sort of issues around things, and it could be any number of reasons, there's excuses, stoppers, that kind of stuff can really affect what you're doing. And it's kind of like there's the Rumi quote. I'll use this over and over again because it's really my favorite. It really speaks to this, I believe. And Rumi says, your task is not to seek for love. Your task is to seek and find that within yourself that you've built against it. So it's as if to say, it's there, it's coming at you all the time, it's available, but what you've got is you're blocking it and you're almost repelling it. And instead of what we're taught in our culture, I mean, this is America, and my experience is go get it, got to be a go-getter, go out and get it, go get them, go chase it down, go hunt it, all that. When really, as much, even if I did hunt it down, if I found it, if I have a block, an internal block built against it, what good is finding something if I can't let it in? So I would, in my humility, update Rumi's quote to add to it and say, your task is not to seek for love, money, success, fortune, fame, accomplishment, whatever, fill in the blank. Your task is to seek and remove all that within yourself you've built against it. So this is really what I'm talking about here. Another way of saying your task is to, your task isn't to play the guitar perfectly. Your task is to first tune the guitar so that when you do play it, it'll sound good. And that's, I think, the end of that little story. But think about that. If you've got a certain issue or something going on about that, think about how you can address that. And there's a number of modalities to do that. You could go see a therapist. You could, there's a system called Psych-K, which is probably one of the easiest ones to use, where you can take the issue and basically melt it, so to speak. I don't know what else to call it, but it does get to where you can let go of whatever extra energy you have around something going on there. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, but just keep that in mind, because as much as you practice and practice and practice to get something right, if the guitar ain't tuned, it's not going to sound right, no matter what you do. So you've got to invest some of your time, thinking, energy into tuning the guitar. Okay, so somebody asked me a question. I've got to go on and they could ask me about that. Happy to talk about that if you like. Here's a question. So yes, I was just speaking at the California Women's Conference a couple of weeks ago, and what I spoke about, and I actually gave you the presentation that I spoke about. I kind of redid it here on video last week, and it was all about how to use conscious language to succeed in business. And what that was about was talking about how we use a lot of double negatives. And in a way, but for example, saying things like, don't think of an elephant. Of course you think of an elephant. And so all this language we use in a sales presentation or an investor presentation, we want to say things that are positive toward where we want the conversation to go. We want them to do a deal with us. We want them to write us a check. We want them to invest. We want them to come work for us. We want them to hire us. So in our conversations, just to kind of recap that whole thing, every time you use the word don't, and we have a lot of double negatives in our world, every time you use the word don't, think of an elephant, boom, they think of an elephant. Don't worry. What? Worry? They start worrying. Don't forget. The word is, now you've introduced forget. Every time you use the word don't, you're actually introducing the very concept you don't want to introduce. So at the end of the presentation, or at the end of the sales pitch, or the investor pitch, you've got objections to overcome. And I would assert that many of those objections that you need to overcome are created by you. And I have a visual in there that looks like a herd of elephants that are coming at you because you've created a herd of elephants by all these don'ts and don't you hate it when, and and break a leg and knock yourself out and go for broke. All these things that we say create these images of, I don't know what, but there's certainly, I would say, not what we really want to have happen, yet we think we joke about it, we throw them down in front of us, and now they're the very things we stumble over on the way toward what we want. And if you can speak positively and put in images that you want in there, even if it says something like, I want to go as far as like, don't write me a check, but it's still got the write me a check in there. So anyway, be very mindful of the words you use, the visuals you create, even though you may use the word don't, won't, can't, I hate it when, whatever. You're introducing a visual or an experience that would not necessarily be in the direction you want to go with your presentation or your pitch. So that's what that was. And you can come in, look at last week, and I actually have a little keynote slideshow with some pictures to illustrate this and make a point. And so it went over very well at the California Women's Conference. It was something I like to refine into a TED Talk. Versus I think about this, I keep coming up with more things, that not to say, like don't forget, or I don't want to lose you. In fact, I wrote a few down here the other day, and I just was thinking like, don't move, don't stop, don't look now. You love that? You say, don't look now. What do people do? What? And they look, you go, I just told you not to look. But you said don't, but then the operative word was look, and that's what they do. So that's what what happens when you have that and you're not thinking about the impact of your words, even though you use the word don't. The don't is might as well be silent. It's just not even there. So anyway, that's what I talked about at the women's conference, which was fun. It was fun to talk to them about it. I think they really loved it, which was good to hear. So sometimes I wonder if I'm bringing up something like this, and I don't know if it's all that profound, but it's a simple thing that happens in our world, and it's no mystery to me that many of us have lives the way they are. But listening to how people talk, I can hear how they look at their life. Like when they say, "Yeah, man, I'm going to go for broke." Well, maybe you're going to bet the farm, or you're going to invest your last dime, which is okay. I don't think you're doing that to go broke. So say something else. Like the mantra I've adopted is, I'm going to make a fortune on this thing. So, or with my luck, I'm going to make a fortune on this thing, to keep that idea in my mind instead of like something like, well, I won't say it. So anyway, and if you have another question or some comment, I'd love to hear it. Appreciate that. Obviously, you went to the California Women's Conference, which was really a fun conference and a really extraordinary event for women. And it's, how we could really, we had a deal there where we were giving the women a free copy of Biz Plan Builder to use. And because we wanted them to, you had a lot of really great ideas. I'm all about championing your ideas for doing things. And then how can you take those ideas and perhaps build them into a successful company? Because that way, I hear people talk about, well, I'm doing this work that I do, and then I have a side hustle. I think a side hustle. What if, and the side hustle is always the thing they're excited about, So what if you could take the so-called side hustle and make that your mainstay, make that your job, if you will, and it's something you want to do, it's something that's contributing to the world, and I've got this software that helps you do that, exactly that. I want to see more people take their so-called side hustle and make it into a full-time hustle to do something that makes them money they can afford to do, and it's the contribution you want to make to the world. Let's do that. Let's get this going and build a successful company on it, and that's what I'm about. So anyway, what else would you like to talk about that we can address here possibly? I've got my chat box open here. For next time, you can certainly email me at burke@businesspowertools.com and do that. So, I'm here as long as you like to do this. All the, on a Thursday afternoon here, so I'll take an hour if you want. Usually it's not an hour, it's usually more like a half an hour, and we talk about things. And so I'll have some idea like I have to talk about, but I really want to hear your questions and be sure that you're going well, using our products well, making the most of them. The part about the language is important because we've infused all of our apps and templates, the business plan, the marketing plan, the PR plan, with this kind of thinking. And I want to make sure you continue that thinking, the positive thinking toward where you want to go, and let's say not introduce negative language to it, which would defeat it. But I want you to it's difficult in a way to practice this positive wording, positive language, because we've got so much in our culture that's just habitual. But we've worked very hard to make our products be forward speaking, so you always introduce the positive visuals and experiences in them that you want to have. And we want to be sure that you continue that thinking when you're writing your plan or filling them out and editing them and going to present to investors or hiring your people. Oh, here's a question. Okay, so tell me about your Biz Plan Builder and how it works. I just bought it. Now what? What will I need to do to prepare? Okay, so you got Biz Plan Builder. Yay, how it works. The idea how Biz Plan Builder works is, here's another question. Okay. And you can pull up the software next week, and I can share the screen and show you where you're stuck. Yeah, I can do that. If you want to, if we could share a screen, we could look at your thing and where you're stuck and tell you about that. Tell me where you're specifically hung up, and what's going on. But what maybe a question you don't know how to answer. But really, what the Biz Plan Builder does, it's kind of like a movie script to introduce your business concept to investors, ostensibly to invest in you. It's also useful, I think of it as an elaborate brochure, if you will, to show not just investors, but partners, people you want to work with you, friends and family who want to understand your business, people you want to hire, vendors. Vendors, we've used our own business plan very successfully with vendors where we want to get credit because the vendor wants to know who you are and what you're about. When they see that you have a business plan, it really is a giant step from the fantasy land in your head of this vision. I want to do this thing. I've got this great idea to actually getting there and doing it. Actually having a written plan you can show people and talk about. The other thing about it is it really will save you a tremendous amount of time in just explaining your business to people because they can read it and they can read it in a sequence. I think that's important. When you start out with, here's a problem in the world, here's how many people have this problem, so to speak. Investors want to know how big can this business get. So you want to know that you're addressing a viable problem and what is your solution to it. And so then it goes on to, who the people behind it, who's the team you've got to put this together, who has the experience from different, and the education from different walks of life or different companies they've worked for. You could combine them in the right combination, like making a new dish, but you're a really good cook, you know how to grab the right ingredients, put them together to make a new thing. That's what the investors want to see, is who are the people managing this thing and how do they have the experience to pull this off. Then, of course, who else is doing it? Which sometimes you can say, well, nobody's doing it, but there's always somebody doing something about it. Well, how are people dealing with it now? So how are you going to have them invest or buy your product or service versus what they're doing now, because you're making it much easier, cheaper, better, faster, all of that. So anyway, and the difference is there's a lot of free things out there that I've seen. Like I saw one the other day, it says how to write your business plan in 10 minutes. Well, yeah, sure. You can click that thing open. You can open up each section, but guess what? Every time you open it up and it says, for example, tell me about your management team, it's empty. There's nothing in it. There's no example of what to say, nothing. And so that's where the real distinction between Biz Plan Builder and the rest of the products out there is that we have content. We've actually got stuff to say. We actually have paragraphs you can choose from. It's like multiple choice answers and sentences and options. And it gives you a lot of ideas, and there's instruction there giving you some ideas. There's even videos with me saying, hey, here's what you got to think about. Kind of like a movie director talking to an actor saying, okay, here's how we want this scene to go. This is what you're doing in this scene. This is why you're doing it. This is your motivation in this scene. You're angry at this guy. You're in love with this person, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, how to play it. In our case, what are investors looking for? What are lenders looking for? What's important about this section to the people who are going to read it? And that's where I think a lot of people don't really understand. Like, well, what am I saying here? What's the purpose of this section? Why is it important? How is it used? How is it interpreted? And that's very important, I believe, for your understanding and usefulness. This is that tuning the guitar part of you behind the scenes. Like, where are you coming from? What are you thinking as you write this section and prepare this section and then pitch it to investors? And then being prepared to answer their questions. You really want to guard against being caught unawares in front of a bunch of investors. I've been in these rooms where, like a Keiretsu forum, where you've got 30 to 50 people sitting around a table. Any one of them could write a check that would fund your whole deal. But if you stand up and say something, well, I won't say stand up and say something stupid, but I mean, if you can't answer some questions, if you really haven't thought your business through, these guys want to know that, what do you know about your business? Do you really know what you're doing? Do you have the right people? And if you stumble through the answers to the questions, they're going to put their checkbooks back in their pocket. And that is tragic, really, because you're in front of them. This is your golden moment to pitch your deal, yet you don't really have the answers to the questions, and then all is for naught. So that's a problem. So here's a question. Will it help me when I have to start hiring consultants? I have no clue about hiring people. I don't have an HR background. Will it help me avoid pitfalls? Well, yeah, the business plan will help you with all of that, because then the consultants will know what you're up to and what you're doing. Likewise, with potential employees, I would give employees at least the executive summary. Maybe give them more of the business plan to read, depending on how far down the path to hiring them you are. But yeah, it's important that they understand the business, and you could ask them questions like, okay, what would you do here? And give them kind of like test questions. We hired one of our editors for Biz Plan Builder way back when, and I gave him a page of text that had it was perfectly good, except it had, at least a half a dozen to a dozen known, sections of bad grammar, bad punctuation, something that wasn't clear. We just wanted to see how different people fixed that page and made it into something that was good. And this one guy really did a great job. In fact, he fixed up things that were even better than the original. So, which was great. That's exactly what we're looking for. So in a way, you want to engineer some kind of tests to give people. And we had one person, I was going to hire her for PR way back when. And I asked her a question like, well, how would you handle this deal? And it was a current deal we were working on. And I wasn't asking her to do it. I was just asking her to tell me how she would do it. And she said, well, you pay me for that. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. That's what I should get paid for. I'm thinking, well, okay, so there's truth to that. But at the same time, I wanted to see like how she would address the issue. And believe me, there was plenty more to come, plenty more that I could be paying for. But just her whole attitude in that toward it really told me, here's a person who's going to probably be difficult to work with. She's going to be difficult in an interview. How would she be, more forthcoming down the road? I don't know. So that kind of blew that deal up. So that was one of the things there about a couple of things about hiring people. One of the things I know is that how people do one thing is how they do everything. So oftentimes you'll hear about venture capitalists taking people out to play golf. Now, I know a lot of these guys like to play golf, so it's a great reason to play golf, and I do that too. But the point is, they would take you out to play golf and to see how you play. Maybe you're not really a big player. Maybe you don't play at all. They probably wouldn't do that to you if you can't play at all, but don't play at all. But let's say you do play golf. They go, hey, let's go. And it's not so much about playing golf with you as it is watching to see how you address the ball. Do you cheat on the scorecard? Are you polite? What do you like? Because after you play 18 holes, I think your good behavior is going to wear off. Probably about halfway, about maybe a hole 9. You're out there. Okay, now the real me is going to be the golfer out there, and that's who they're looking for. They want to get a sense of who you are as a person, because they're going to invest millions of dollars with you. They're going to come to your board meetings. They're going to invite people. They're going to recruit people, I should say, to come to work for your company, and they want to see how you behave. What do you like? What kind of person are you? Are you someone they can hang with for a long time, call it 5 to 7 years, while your business matures, and then they can take it public or help you sell it, or whatever you want to do in the so-called exit strategy. Another thing people do, I've heard this, is take you to lunch, and some people just salt their food without even tasting it. That's a bad sign, in hiring, because they'll see, well, you're a person who just does things without really looking to see what's already there. Do you just haul off and make changes before you really observe how it is? Did you taste the food first? I've heard of other stories where they'll take you to lunch and have a deal with the restaurant, whether it's they're going to tell the restaurant guys, okay, look, we're bringing this guy here to lunch. And what I want you to do is, if he orders a cheeseburger, bring him a bacon sandwich, bring him just something wrong. And I want to see how he handles you. How does this person handle the wait staff? Are you rude to the wait staff? Are you how are you with them? That's telling if you're hiring someone in a management position. So that's something to do. We also have an employee policy manual, which really, it's got an incredible number of sample policies in it, 200 and more. And you'd think 200 policies, how is that even possible? Well, over 27 years and taking requests from people to address certain issues, it just grew to that. Now, the way it's set up, the way there's a menu tree with check boxes on it. And so we recommend just check all the boxes and then go back through and uncheck the boxes that don't matter to you. So, for example, you might have a grievance procedure. Well, grievances really aren't there unless you're, like a large company with a union shop, and there's going to be some kind of grievance about something. So if you're a small company with 5 to 10 people, but you want employee policies, you can uncheck the grievance issue box, and we tell you about what to do, what to uncheck, what to use, what not to use. And we talk about each one in there the same way, just so you know what this is about. Even if you just bought it and read it, and there's not a whole lot to really edit in there, except it automatically fills in your company name. There's places to make some changes in there. We highlight those for you and give you some advice around what to do. Nevertheless, just read the thing. If you read the thing, you will be up on managing people. Not so much just from an HR policies and procedures perspective, but, well, that too, and really just how you manage people. And I know a lot of people, you get promoted into a management position and think, uh-oh, what am I going to do? And so this will help a lot. So let's see. I heard of a lot of companies that now outsource to a staffing agency so to avoid liability. What are your thoughts on that? How does the employee manual offer value versus well, I've used the staffing agency. They're fine. They're not going to help you avoid liability. The liability is still going to be yours, as far as I can tell. Just because, and I've had people, help me hire people, but I've hired some of the people that the staffing agency thought were great, and this is part of me learning how to hire people. But I hired some, I don't know, awful people that happened to come through a staffing agency. And at the same time, I've had a staffing agency work wonders for me because they can handle a lot of stuff. Nevertheless, at some point, it's still incumbent upon you to understand this stuff. You can't just abdicate everything to a consultant or an outside agency. You're still responsible. You still need to do it. You're still going to deal with a headache if you make the mistake. So these guys are great at handling paperwork and payroll and stuff, but I think you're really better off with your own employee policy manual. In fact, we have several staffing agencies using our employee policy manual because it just makes life so much easier for them, and they can offer it to their clients. And that's what we want consultants to do, is to sign up subscriptions for their clients and give their client access to our stuff, and we make it all easy for really everybody, which is a beautiful thing. So does your software for employees offer a personality profile test? We don't have that in there. There are a number of those personality profile tests. I think they're handy. All the way from handwriting analysis to astrology to the Big Five assessment to the Myers-Briggs. There's different people argue that different ones have different things, and some people roll their eyes at some, or some will say it makes no difference. There's the DISC, the DISC, the dominant. I forgot what the rest of them mean. But that's an interesting one too. It's a little shorter, but it tells you, the idea is like you could, do it yourself so you can see, how you are analyzed, scored, whatever in these things. But what they tell you is when you do it yourself, then let's say you're an engineering type CEO and you're hiring a salesperson, you can see in there the person who's administering these tests can help you understand, look, you're an engineer. The salesperson is going to be very different than you. But you want a sales type person who's out there and gregarious and wants to go out and make sales, versus the engineering type who, like, if you're kind of like me, engineering type, I like to tinker with stuff. And so the salesperson wants to go out and see people, the engineer wants to stay and tinker. If you hire another engineer because you feel like, well, I can really relate to this other engineer, they're just like me, we get along great, but they're supposed to be a salesperson, that could be a big mistake. So you've got to be able to get past the idea of, I've got to hire people like me. In fact, you want to hire people who are not like you, but compatible with you. And that's what a lot of these personality tests can show you. We'll have links in our dashboard that will link to sources of those that you can use. They're relatively inexpensive. Really inexpensive, because typically a hiring mistake, as I understand it from my recruiter friends, a hiring mistake will cost you about a year's worth of their salary or compensation. So if you're hiring a $100,000 a year person and you screw that up, well, you probably paid a recruiter, maybe you spent a lot of time training them, interviewing people. They probably worked for you from 3 to 6 months, and you just fed up and you realize they don't fit. And then maybe you haven't let them go soon enough. And so that's the hard part, is you want to, hire, hire slow, fire fast. And that might have made the opposite mistake. I'd hire somebody really fast, and then I would take a long time to fire them. Big mistake. So anyway, that's what those things will help you avoid, help you find people that are better fit with you from the get-go and not have to rehire somebody later. So that's a good one. So anyways, yeah, that's a lot to talk about for today. So happy to answer your questions. What I talk about next week, I want to go on into some more about the business plan, some areas of the business plan. We've talked about market analysis. We've talked about the management team. We've talked about some of the business structure things before. There's a lot built into the plan that answers these questions and addresses that. So I can talk more about that. We can talk about funding, some ideas about funding. One of the things I could talk about really could be revenue sharing, revenue royalty sharing. What that means is, instead of selling equity in your company and selling ownership percentage in your company, which I know many entrepreneurs just really don't want to give up any part of their company. But if you've got a good margin, you might want to talk about revenue share. So pay your investor a small percentage of the revenue, because a lot of these investors, they're getting kind of old, and they want to be sure that they're afraid that if they invest in you, they may not live long enough to see the return on their investment, which is a bummer. So this way they can start seeing some return on it right away. We'll talk about that. Anyway, so if you've got a question for today, let's see, what else? I don't know what else to tell you. I think I'm good to go here. I mean, if you've got another question that comes in at the last minute, I'm happy to answer it, and we can take it from there. And I'll see you next week, Thursdays, 1 o'clock California time. Email me, Burke@businesspowertools.com. It's BURKE @businesspowertools.com. And take a look at businesspowertools.com. Look at the blog. This will be up there where you can rewatch these again. You'll get an email if you've gotten this from the Zoom folks, where we use the Zoom video system. You get an email that's tomorrow that says, hey, you can watch this replay if you want. So that's there. Anyway, those are always there. And I look forward to talking to you again next time, sometime soon. So thanks for showing up, and I look forward to answering your questions next time.